we'll go ahead and get started with some intros. So I'm Colleen. If you've been with LeBaron and Carol for a while, you know that I'm the safety admin and I'm the one sending you all those emails. And today we have Bianca from LNHR. Bianca has 5 years of experience with leadership, training, and development. And today she is here to share some best practices for recruiting, interviewing, onboarding, the whole process. After this webinar, we'll send out the recording and some slides for everyone. So without further ado, take it away.
Awesome. Thanks, Colleen. I am so excited because this is one of my favorite topics. And I just absolutely love just teaching people about how to hire and just that whole process and what to look for. So let me go ahead and share my screen with you all. And we can get going. And then I will stop about halfway through for any questions. And then again at the end, I believe you'll need to type them in the chat. I'm not sure if you will be able to come off mute, but I will either way give you an opportunity. We have a limited amount of time, so I'm going to sort of breeze through as much of this as possible. And so again, we'll take those pauses for anything that comes up, but let's dive in. We're gonna dive right into building winning teams, effective recruiting, and onboarding. So we're going to go over attracting the right people, resume review, interview do's and don'ts, identifying red flags, and then just how to effectively onboard your new hires. All right, so the main goal to understand how to structure the hiring process for attracting strong talent, and then how to keep them, because we're going to do all this work to get them in the door. We also want to keep them and keep them happy and working for us. To make sure you feel comfortable with the current laws and best practices, you can go into interviews with confidence and certainty. I'm going to give you some tips and tricks on the interview process, and then overall, just want you to have better knowledge of the end-to-end process. And like Colleen said at the beginning, you're going to have access to these slides, so you'll be able to refer back to anything as well. All right. First thing in the recruiting process is just getting the right people, sourcing the right talent. So attracting the right people is largely going to be how effectively are you posting job ads and reaching out to people. So here, I wanted to really drive home the main difference between a job description and a job ad, because sometimes they're used interchangeably, but I really want to clarify what each purpose is for, so that you can use them and utilize them the best to your ability. So knowing the difference between a job description and a job ad, I've put some basic descriptions here. So job description is a written document that provides detailed information about a specific job within your organization that outlines the roles, the responsibilities, the duties, and requirements associated with the position. So this is a formal document that the employee will sign upon coming on board. It's really for you to hold them accountable to. Like they're going to have a clear outline of all their responsibilities, so you have that reference point and there's no discrepancies on what's within the scope of their job and what's not. So moving into a job ad, this is a promotional and informative communication designed to attract qualified candidates to apply for this job. It's created by employers to reach potential candidates through various channels such as job boards, company websites, social media, etc. So this is what you would come across if I'm on Indeed. I would see the job ad, which is you don't want to just have the job description just copied and pasted, which we'll kind of get into, because you really want people to see it and be attracted to it. So the best way to think about this is the job description is the internal document, the job advertisement is the external posting. So just to kind of dive into this a little bit deeper, the job description, the main purpose again is to provide detailed information about a specific job role within an organization, and includes clear job expectations for the employee on what the job entails and what they will be held accountable for. So that way, if, Sally starts working for you and she is dropping the ball in one of these areas, you have that document to reference back to. So, hey, Sally, remember when you signed on board, this was included in your job responsibilities, and you can have that point of reference to create action plans from. Now, the job ad, the main purpose is to attract appealing candidates to apply for an open position. And, again, what you would post on a job board, a company website. And a huge part of this is when people see it, that they'll want to read more. So we'll go into some tips and tricks for that as well. So creating attractive job ads, again, you want to have something that when people read it, they're actually interested in the role, but even more so that they're interested in your company. And this is when I always recommend at the top having a compelling company overview. So when people are searching, without even having to look further or research your company, you have a little summary there. So what makes your company great and why do they want to work for you? And I think this is really important in competitive markets, and I think a huge miss on a lot of people, because if you have really attractive benefits or you have a flexible schedule, you really want to have that highlighted right away so candidates go, oh, wow, that's what I'm looking for. Let me read more about the job description, right? So another thing to include is the job responsibilities, but you want to make it sound a little bit more relatable and authentic so that people, it's not so cut and dry. You want to have concise responsibilities, the company benefits, growth opportunities, the relatable tone, like I mentioned, and just crystal clear application process. A huge thing I see with companies online is that in the ad, they go way too far into the fluffy ad, and it's actually really not clear what the job description or what the job will entail. And so candidates won't know that they're qualified or if they're interested. So something to keep in mind is finding that balance where you do want to be really clear on the job expectations, what the responsibilities are, how to be qualified, but still making it attractive to a candidate. And a really good exercise to do this is if you were to be looking online for a new role, which just putting yourself in the shoes, not saying to do this, but when you think about what would interest you, what would be attractive to you when you're looking through these things, and to really stand out, again, to have that compelling overview right at the beginning so that people, get that first spark of interest. Okay, so again, I know we have limited time, so I will pause in a few slides for questions just to kind of break it up. But once you get the talent that applies, you now need to be able to weed through, the bad applicants and what to look for right away on resumes. So the whole thing with hiring process is wanting to be most efficient with your time, because it is something that can easily take over, hours and hours and hours. So weeding out bad resumes right at the first stage can really help you save time with, not interviewing the wrong people. So things I look for on resumes: do they have enough work experience? I know that seems a little bit like a no-brainer, but how long have they stayed at each job as well? So, looking from the beginning of their career till now, depending on the role, how long are they bouncing around? Do they have good tenure? Especially when it comes to your company culture, are you looking for a long-term fit? If you're looking for somebody that is going to be staying for a while, but their last few jobs, they have stayed under a year, that kind of tells you their mindset and their behavior. And at the very least, it's just something to take note of and bring up. So another thing I look for are any job gaps, and really the amount of time that they're spending not working. And the few things with this right off the bat are their skills going to be sharp enough if they haven't been working for the last 6 months to a year, right? Another thing with job gaps is it kind of can tell you about their character. How long, what have you been doing since March? What have you been doing to find work? And we'll get into how to phrase some of those questions a little bit later. But you're just looking for any red flags. And again, just making note of things to bring up in the interview. Something that can set apart a really great candidate from a bad candidate is what they were doing most recently. So what they're doing most recently, is it translatable into what I'm going to be having them do? And how is that transition going to go, right? So maybe they have done this role in the past, but for the last 5 years, they haven't done it. And so, just keeping those things in mind based on what you're going to need. If you need somebody that can come in and hit the ground running, somebody that hasn't done that role or those job responsibilities most recently may have a harder time coming in and really getting up to speed as quickly as you need. So again, keeping in mind for each role at each level is going to look a little bit different, but you're just trying to get the basics of, is it make sense to bring this person in for an interview? So another really great thing to look for is just a natural progression over their career. So have they stayed in the same role, the same level for 10 years with no advancement, no, promotions or no career growth? So especially getting into those upper level management roles, you really want to look for that natural progression. And then as well as, do they include quantifiable results? Especially when it comes to each job role, you really want to be looking for the verbiage of how they impacted the position and not so much the team, because some people have, a 7-page resume and there's no way you could be impacting the company with every single bullet point for that amount of time, right? So again, just always be looking for those red flags and things to bring up in the interview. Now, I would say if they're about 50% there on paper and there's enough to bring them in, that's fine. I would just say keeping these bullet points in mind can help, especially those deciding factors. If you have 2 that are really good towards the end, these might be some good ways to rule people out. But overall, again, just wanting to be most efficient with your time. And I would say these are the top things that I will rule people out with before, bringing in people that have a little bit more tenure or less job gaps, that type of thing. All right, so I just want to pause for a second. I know there's a lot of information. Any questions or comments? Not seeing anything pop up, but feel free to raise your hand, type something in the chat. Okay, I don't see anything. So let's go ahead and move on to interview do's and don'ts. So after you attract the right talent, you rule out the ones that just right off the bat don't seem to have the experience. Maybe they're hopping around too much. You find a good one, you're excited, you want to bring them in. This is what we're going to cover next. So a few things with interviewing. What I always really like to drive home with this is really the first impression of your company. This is the candidate's first experience. And so I know we typically look from a manager perspective as we're the interviewing party, and we look at it through that lens, but they also are looking at through the lens of a potential employee. And they're also looking for certain things that during that interview that they will essentially decide if they want to work for you as well. And so I love to describe this as a partnership, a relationship. So if you can look at it less as like manager and potential employee, and just look at it as we are two people to see if this is a good fit, I find that to be a lot better for the relationship down the road, especially if this person does come on board. Everything starts from that first conversation, right? So, number one, be prepared with any questions from their application or their resume. So, for example, if they have a long job gap, but they've been pretty consistent the last 2-3 years, they had a year or two in between where they weren't working, make note of that and make note of any of those red flags that you can address in the interview. And this is your opportunity to just ask more questions and dive deeper. So being in a client environment, definitely important, where you can focus 100% on the conversation. Again, this is their first impression. So if you're kind of scattered, there's a lot of distractions, it might be really hard for them to focus and give you the information that you need to make a decision as well. Number 3 is building rapport and just being relatable and down to earth. So a part of this working relationship is going to come back down to the employee. Do they want to work for you, right? So you want to set that tone from the very first conversation and make an effort to get to know them as well, asking them questions and not just diving it straight into the bullet points, right? That leads really well into active listening. And this is something that really is just such a great skill to have no matter work, home, in your life. But what that looks like is really asking the questions and letting them speak and asking follow-up questions. So really taking the step back, letting them talk about themselves, not cutting them off or not jumping in or not just recircling back to you, and just really letting them articulate and share. And another really great reason for that is because if they're not the right fit, they might start saying things that, again, those little red flags or those internal alarms might be going off, right? So super important to just always let them speak and to ask probing questions. So that leads into the next point of asking open-ended questions. So you don't want to ask questions that are just yes or no, right? Because you really want to gauge how well they know this experience, how well they know this role. And so you want to ask them questions and you want to be paying attention to how they answer it, right? So if I'm answering questions really short and I'm just kind of, yeah, I've done that, and you're trying, can you elaborate? Can you tell me when and how much? And give me an example. You want to be paying attention to how they respond to those questions as well. Next point being to just be transparent. I've seen a few situations where, a manager really oversells a role, or like maybe they aren't quite the right fit, but you kind of morph into what you think they want to hear. And this is really dangerous because when they do come on board and they learn that what they signed up for isn't quite what they signed up for, they're going to be extremely disappointed and want to go look for something else. And the whole point of this presentation is to prevent that, right? Because once we take all this time to go through their resume, to get them in and hire them and onboard them, we want to keep them. We want to, make sure it's a mutual good fit. Sorry. So moving to being clear about the job description and the day-to-day responsibilities, the whole part of the interview, like I was saying, to make sure both parties are in agreement it's a good fit. So, when you go over the expectations and the key responsibilities, is that something they're excited about? Does that align? Like, how do you feel about that? what you're looking for, align with what you're looking for in your next role. And then just to keep the whole process streamlined and clear, I always recommend wrapping up that interview with great next steps look like this. So whether that is, passing them along to the next hiring manager, whether that is discussing it with the team, and then being really clear when they should hear back. So when I'm doing first initial screens, I will say, great, I have everything I need here. Next steps will look like this. I'm going to send your resume over to the hiring manager. I'm going to fill them in on our conversation. And I will let you know by the end of the week if they would like to move forward with you or if they've chose to go in another direction. That way, they're not, reaching out a bunch of times. They're not getting frustrated. They're not guessing. Hey, this is what the next step looks like. This is when you'll know. And I think just giving them a few days of a parameter is really helpful. And again, if you are going to be moving them along, it just gives them that extra line of communication and smooths the process. I see a question that popped in. Let's see. How do you account for candidates who interview really well, but once they are hired, don't perform to the expectations they set during the interview? Is there a good way to screen for this? Okay, I love this question. So a few things here. First of all, people are people. When people are your product, there's going to be one-offs. There's going to be things that happen. As far as if they're not performing up to the expectations, you would want to make sure that's in the job description. So that's a good reference point. If it is in the job description, you can create an action plan from that job description and say, that can be a further conversation. And we can circle back to that. I believe I cover that in one of the slides. But as far as screening for this, you'll want to ask questions off their resume and ask them to give examples. So for example, that don't perform the expectations set during the interview. So you'll ask a bullet point from their resume and ask them to give an example. And you'll start to see, you'll want to see or look for, did they actually do what they said on the resume and follow through with that? A lot of this will come down to the action plan because, again, anybody can say, yes, I'm going to do all the things. And if they're not, then that's more of a coaching conversation and development development portion. But again, that's what's really important about having a very detailed job description and really clear expectations set. It sounds like you have that documentation and it needs to be more of a coaching conversation. And I would say overall, again, when you're screening for this, you want to just look for behavior patterns. So are they stretching the truth anywhere? Are you catching them in any other discrepancies from their resume? How are they answering the questions? Are they really giving you question or answers that express that they actually really care about what they're doing? Because if you have a high care level naturally, then you will perform well in the role. If you just, even why you're leaving the job is a good red flag to look out for how they perform. This person that doesn't meet expectations might say something like, my manager and I just didn't really get along, or, this job, it really is, not flexible with my schedule, or, things like that, which could allude to the discrepancy in, meeting expectations versus not. So hopefully that helps. Okay. Oh, I keep doing that. So again, just being clear about the interview process end to end. Going back to that question as well, this is where you want to identify the culture fit. And really start asking yourself, is this somebody that I could see working for me? And this will vary role to role, but looping in that question, you'll want to look for leadership qualities. How do they hold themselves? How are they answering? Are they saying it with confidence? Are they saying it with certainty? Is this somebody I could see leading a team? Is this somebody that I would trust to do the tasks at hand? And so those soft skills and the culture fit, you'll want to, maybe compare them to your best employee. Do they have similar qualities? That type of thing. And just really connecting back to the company culture, the company mission, and having that as a reference point to, does that person match with those softer skills and that culture fit? And then, of course, the interview is your opportunity to really express excitement and really get them enrolled in your company mission. And this is when I would say, like, having the clear company overview is really great, because a lot of companies have really great benefits or really great aspects and like growth opportunities that this would be the time to highlight. You really want to enroll them in your company, what they'll be doing, and get them excited as well. You want them to leave and be like, wow, that was such a great experience. Like, I really hope I get the job. I really want to work with them. Okay, just a moment. Okay, so we went over the interview do's. These are some interview don'ts. First and foremost, being late, which again just sets a really bad first impression. It just kind of sets the tone for the rest of the interview. Oftentimes, if you're late, you're kind of feeling frazzled, you're not feeling prepared, which leads me to not winging it. You really want to come with those questions ahead of time from the resume. Anything that popped up during that application process, anything you're unsure of, or anything you just thought to be interesting. Hey, tell me a little bit more about that. I noticed that you did this at such and such company. Love to hear more, right? Huge one that we're going to go over a little bit more in detail on the next couple of slides is using any biased language relating to age, gender, race, religion, or any other protected characteristics and protected classes. Interview don'ts is oversharing personal information. I do love to, help people be relatable and build that rapport and that relationship, but without touching into the personal category or, saying anything that might make them feel uncomfortable as well. And then not rushing through questions or the job description. The point of this interview is to really help them get a better understanding of the day-to-day, see if that's a good fit, and take the time to really dive deeper. This first interview will really set the tone for if they're going to be hired, and you'd rather find out any information in that first interview that will save you time down the road, versus, oh, maybe you felt the uneasiness, or maybe they said something that you're like, but you push them through anyways, and then, they get hired on and you go through the whole process, and that could all been prevented from that first interview if we just dive a little bit deeper. And so that can also just show up in a lot of technicalities, like where they live, or if they need a certain license, or anything that we're not covering up front can really end up hurting us down the road. Now we'll get into just the more logistical side of things. It's not to scare you or make you over analytical. It's just to have a reference point, and this is really just to protect you and give you the information needed to, again, frame your questions more thoughtfully, and making sure you're giving them the first experience, the first impression that you want. So some of the laws pertaining to interview questions, like we were mentioning before, anything race, sex, color, nation of origin, religion, or ethnicity related is off limits. And so something that you can shape your questioning around. We can always support you with that. If you have anything that comes up, definitely feel free to reach out, and maybe you don't know how to answer it in the moment, we can also give our recommendations. So for example, I used to work in the hospitality industry. So religion could come up with Sundays, the schedule, like them not being able to work. So instead of saying, do you go to church on Sundays? You're going to need to work Sundays if you have this conflict, you can't work here. You can frame the questions in more of a way saying, hey, do you have complete and open availability, right? Is this schedule going to work with your scheduling, right? And so framing it in a way that doesn't make it about any of these aspects. And, one that we see a lot is further down, the Immigration Reform and Control Act. There's a lot of ways you can ask this without asking them if they're a citizen, right? Are you eligible to work in the US? Can you provide this information upon hire, right? Versus, can you work here? Are you a citizen? So always wanting to take into consideration the other party, how they might feel, and especially because if they do feel any of these aspects or these boundaries were crossed, they can take action against your company. And so we just want to make sure we have the information, again, just to inform and make the best possible decisions based off that. So other two listed on this slide are age discrimination and Americans with Disabilities Act. And so that's why we also include a lot of that information in our documentation, in the job descriptions. Are you able to lift such and such weight? Are you able to be on your feet? That type of thing can be framed in a way saying this job is going to require you're able to lift this amount of weight. Is that something that is doable for you? Second part of this is genetic information non-discrimination, national labor relations, uniform services employment and reemployment rights, bankruptcy, and child support enforcement amendments. Again, things to be aware of. And again, we can support you in any verbiage if any of these things come up and you want to inquire about them. But really, you just want to avoid anything that's discriminating against a potential candidate or making them feel that way. Okay, so this is sort of what the question was talking about earlier. So we'll take a little bit of a deeper dive into identifying red flags and soft skills. And again, this is something that's just gonna take some practice. Like there are a lot of situations that's how we learn, right? Like being in this industry, hiring and taking people through this process, a lot of it is learning by doing. And a lot of this, unfortunately is coming across that bridge when it comes, right? But the whole point of this as well is just to hopefully prevent some of those and give you the most tools and information to avoid any surprises, right? Number one, does their story match their resume? A lot of people, especially with ChatGPT, a lot of AI, anybody can write a resume, right? So you want to ask those probing questions and watch how they respond. Are they able to expand upon it? People that are very knowledgeable and love what they do, they get excited to talk about their projects. They get really excited to break down, oh my gosh, yeah, this is how this works. And, especially as a third party, oftentimes, oh, like, tell me about this software, what does that do? And, watching how they respond. Do they get excited to break it down, or are they annoyed? Right? Looking for those qualities, somebody that gets excited to tell you about what they're doing is most likely having a higher care level than somebody that's like annoyed to break it down, right? Are they prepared? So are they coming in late? Are they coming in a little frazzled? There's a big difference between being nervous and being unprepared, or being misleading. So you'll want to look for those differences in how they respond. Can they break down experience and give specific examples? Again, we're just trying to weed out and pay attention to any red flags for behaviors that don't match with what they're saying that they've done. A huge soft skill portion is just, how does the conversation flow? Are you feeling like you're having to pry answers out when you're asking them questions? Are they engaged? Are they able to say what they've done without question or without hesitation? Like any of us, when we're explaining something that we do every day, it should be fairly easy. It shouldn't be really a struggle to say, oh, what software am I using again? Like, if this is really something that you're doing in your day to day, and you're telling me that you have years of experience in, you should be able to say it, right? Again, on the soft skill side, I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but can you see yourself working with them? And, depending on the role, again, is this someone you're going to have to collaborate with? You're possibly most likely going to be working with this person in the day to day. So if in that first conversation, it feels tough, it feels a lot of resistance, if there's, some of those red flags coming up, chances are that will get worse with time, or that's, them showing a lot of who they are. And so it's not from a place of a bias or a judgment. It's just from a lens of, will this person work well within my team? Can I see them getting along with their teammates? Can I see them being easy to collaborate with? And a lot of that, again, goes down to the flow of the conversation and their excitement level and how engaged they are. So that leads me to, paying attention to their attitude and energy level, especially in the virtual world. It can be easy for people to not take it as serious, or just brush things to the side. You really want to pay attention. Are they having 20 million interviews? Are they feeling burnt out? I've had a ton of candidates say, sorry, what company is this again? Sorry, I have so many interviews going on, right? That's not really a winning attitude of somebody that I want to bring on. Like, I want somebody that's really organized, that, has their ducks in a row, that's engaged and excited and done their research on the company and are ready to go. Asking questions like how they deal with difficult teammates or clients. This is one of my favorites. Hey, I'm sure, just asking the question, hey, I'm sure in your role, you've dealt with difficult clients, difficult customers, even difficult teammates. Can you give me an example of a time that happened and how you dealt with that? And again, paying attention for the subtleties. How are they describing this difficult client? How are they describing this difficult teammate? What kind of things are they saying? Again, looking for those little tiny indicators. So many of this process, when you get burned by somebody, you look back and you say, oh my gosh, you identify all those little like red flags that you felt in the moment, but you kind of just didn't think they were a big deal. 3, 4, 5 red flags, those add up. And this is what we really want to vet during this process, to just avoid, again, those difficult and people that aren't going to fit within the culture of the company and be the leaders that you want them to be. So a lot of this, again, unfortunately, you're just doing your best to weed out the candidates that aren't going to show up and do what you need them to do. But at the end of the day, like, we can only do our best, right? So between the resume, between the interviewing and onboarding, just really pay attention. encourage and recommend everyone just to pay attention to what comes up, because most of the time we know, but we don't maybe have the words to articulate it. But you want to, pay attention and really take note of anything that doesn't feel right during that process. Okay. One of my favorites, effective onboarding and beyond, because so many candidates that I talk to that are looking for new work, it all goes back to the training. They didn't feel prepared, or they didn't feel like they had growth opportunities. So they want to go somewhere where they do. So effective onboarding and beyond, first and foremost, being organized, because you're going to lose people that don't feel like they were really set up for success in their role. So that starts all the way from interview to hire to first day. So you really want them to feel comfortable coming in that first day. So really ironing out what the first day is going to look like, and what to expect. So do they need to bring their lunch? Do they need to expect a certain schedule, or what do they need to wear? So you really want to have that outline so they come in feeling good. That goes all the way through the clear-cut training program and their enrollment on that first day. So much of retention that we're going to talk about starts from that very first conversation, right? So just being really in clear communication from the very beginning goes such a long way. So kind of elaborating off that, how smoothly does this process go end to end? So, from the very beginning, when you're reaching out to them, interviewing, is that communicated? Is it reliable? Are you rescheduling or canceling? Is everybody prepared? That whole process, getting that really smooth, helps people be set up for success and really buy into your progress. They'll be really, or your process. They'll be really impressed with you. They'll be really excited to be there, and just overall be really a lot more invested. What I see happening when, managers maybe didn't know it was the first day, or, somebody's coming in and they don't know what to do, it starts off them feeling really uncomfortable. And, those feelings and those things, they build over time. And so you just want to make sure, again, they feel really comfortable, and it benefits really both people. Feedback and continuous improvement is a huge, huge, huge aspect of keeping people on your team. So the number one thing, like I said earlier, is people leave their role when they don't feel they're being invested in. A lot of people, and this could be good or bad feedback, because a lot of people just want to know where they stand. They just want to be acknowledged and seen. And so this can even look like acknowledgement, good job, in your feedback, or having something set up where you have that open communication. Maybe it's for newer people, a 30, 60, 90-day check-in. For people have been there longer, maybe it's a 6 month to a year check-in. And in those check-ins, you want to make sure that they're getting any sort of growth or feedback that will help them learn and develop, which leads into growth opportunities. So people, they are driven by the next goalpost. And so when you can really invest in them, they'll invest back in you. So that's leading into the employee engagement efforts. When we feel invested in and we feel like we're learning and growing, that's when we're the most engaged and the most excited about what we're doing. When we just feel stagnant, we're just doing the same thing every day. Maybe we're doing it good, maybe we're doing it bad, we don't really know. That's when people start checking out. That's when they get the wandering eye. Well, I wonder what else is out there, right? And again, you did all the work to bring them on board. You want to do your best to keep those people, and not having those gaps of responsibilities falling falling to the wayside. So it's just really simple of keeping that communication open. And we, if you ever need recommendations on that as well, we're here to help. But again, when people feel that stagnation or that lack of growth or development is, I think, the number one reason people leave a position, in my experience. And then just creating a comfortable environment to give feedback and ask for help. I know a lot of things that go awry if they don't feel comfortable coming or asking for help. They might just make an on-call decision that really puts other people in a bad position that could have been prevented if they just, had that open communication or felt comfortable asking for help. And this applies to so many levels, officially when they onboard, when they're getting trained, if they don't feel comfortable asking, they might not get trained properly. And that could lead into them not doing the job properly, right? And, especially as they come into more, crisis or having to make a judgment call, they don't feel comfortable asking for that insight or that guidance, then again, they might make a call that you wouldn't have had them make or felt comfortable with. And then again, it just gives you a little bit more insight into what's going on in their world. This whole process is built so you have the least amount of surprises. So if somebody doesn't come or doesn't feel comfortable or feel like they have a good relationship with their manager, they might be the people that just leave one day. They might be the people that leave unexpectedly, like, oh, wow, I never would have known that person was looking for other work. Chances are, if you have that strong relationship with them, even if they've outgrown the role and they are looking around, they're going to be the people that say, hey, I really want to at least give a 2-week notice. I don't want to burn bridges with my employer. They've been great to me. Or they might even be the people that come to you and say, hey, like, I feel a little stagnant. I want more responsibility. What can I do to get to the next role, to get to the next checkpoint? What do you need to see from me? Having those types of relationships, again, really helps with keeping people and helps with the least amount of surprises, because we've all, I'm sure, been in those positions where somebody leaves abruptly or unexpectedly, and it really, really puts a strain on the whole entire team, because you're now having to pick up the slack, everybody's panicked. And so this all can be really prevented from just keeping that line of communication open and building that relationship from day one. This is why I really love having those continuous improvement plans, because it just helps you keep a finger on the pulse and gives you that extra, form of communication and just, I guess, leverage if something does change. You have a little bit more information to go off of. So I know that we covered the whole process, and that was a lot, from job ads to hiring and retention. Anything that's come up in that whole process, any other questions, comments, something that you learned, something that you felt was insightful, anything else? We have about 10 minutes.
So I just want to say I really liked the part about shaping appropriate and unbiased questions to protect the company during the interviewing process. I think that's really important. And then also the importance of retention and building a relationship from day one so that your employees don't just leave out of nowhere. So those are really good points.
Yes, I love that.
Yeah. If you guys have questions later on, I know it's hard to think of questions just after all this information. Feel free to email me, and then I can forward them to Bianca. And again, the slides and the recording, once it's ready, will be emailed out to you as well.
Yes. JL I said, and we enjoyed the onboarding action plan. Love it. Yeah, and like I said too, if you later, a few days from now, like, oh, actually really like that you want some more ideas or want some, any templates or anything like that, we're happy to support and help with all of that. I personally love this. I've been doing it a long time, and I really love people and relationship building. So even if it's like, master of small talk, how do I, connect to somebody quickly? Like we're here to support with all of that.
Awesome. Thank you, Bianca, for all this new information. Um, if there's nothing else, we can go ahead and end the webinar. Again,
Awesome.
please do not be shy and just, even after a week, you watch the recording again and you're like, oh, I have all these questions. Just email us anytime.
Awesome. Sounds good. Well, thank you guys so much for having me, and look forward to chatting in the future.
Yes, thank you, Bianca. Thank you, everyone, for showing up today. Have a good day.